Hey there friends, I'm Leo, and today I have a lot of exciting new updates for Sparkmutts. Among them is a new shooting mechanic with a new weapon you can craft, a better visual feedback on the player HUD for your hands, a lock-on targeting system, and much more. So let's get started. The first thing I worked on was the shooting mechanic. The idea here was for it to be inspired by Ratchet & Clank, which was one of the main inspirations at the start of development on Sparkmutts. I thought of making a very fluid combat where you can run around the enemy while shooting, something very smooth and very dynamic. To make the system work, I needed to take into consideration the dual wielding and the two-handed systems in place where you have any item on any hand. There's also the possibility of you equipping one different type of ranged gun on each hand, for example. Each gun with a different damage type and a different projectile. I then decided to make a new component to the gun actor itself, something that would not be tied directly in the player. This is more for organization, since the player is already full of components. So I made the ranged weapon component that is going to deal with the camera movement and the shooting function. Basically, this component is going to serve a similar function to my melee combo component for melee weapons and their combos. Now, inside of the component itself, I have a link for the player controller through a dispatcher that is going to receive clicks from the player if this item is currently selected. It will also do all of the verifications for the ammo and the events to fire the gun, all starting from that input. For example, if you hold down the click, it is going to keep looping the shooting function, and if you want, you can spam click that too. Now, I know all of these blueprints and functions may seem very complicated, but honestly, it's not so bad after you get used to video game logic and know how to think like a developer. The main hurdle, I think, is to get into Unreal Engine right away. Then you have to learn other stuff at the same time pretty much, like modeling, sound design, character animation, texturing, rigging, shader creation, and the list goes on and on. All of that can really put a damper on your creativity and your enjoyment with game development. I always say it feels like drowning because you have no idea how to do anything and every small thing is a monumental task. But what if I told you that I know of a really awesome life jacket that would help you stay creative while also learning video game logic? This video is sponsored by Mutate. Mutate is a straightforward and easy to use game creator with a growing community of active developers and players that all have fun making and playing video games, all for free. With Mutate, you can make platformers, horror games, action games, whatever your mind desires, all without having to write a single line of code, while keeping the core ideas for game logic and the proverbial fun part of game development using the linking system. Mutate is also entirely built from the ground up to be very social and implement multiplayer on all of its creations. And the best part is that you can even create content alongside your friends, and I mean that in the actual level editor. This really got me pumped to do a game jam with some of my mates over the weekend or something like that. Another thing that is amazing with Mutate is that if you don't find a 3D model that you want in Mutate's library, you can always make your own in Blender and upload it to Mutate. Then it is going to automatically convert to voxels there. With this many features, you could pretty much do any game that you'd like. And if you want, you can even remix an already made game and add your own flair to it. Mutate is a work in progress, so it means they have a ton of updates and cool things to add, meaning more game logic, more assets, improved visual language, and they do listen to feedback, so now is the best possible time to join in and be a part of this awesome community. They also have a Discord, by the way, so you can ask questions and interact with the developers there. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description to jump straight into making some games and bringing your ideas to life. It's free and you could be making your first game in a day today. Now back to the video. One really cool thing that I worked on was completely custom events that you can have on each gun. So we can do extra stuff like spawn friendly companions with every shot that is going to help you for like 20 seconds or so. Or maybe even spawn like a black hole or something like that. This customized idea was used to update the visual ammo on the gun with every shot, for example. Besides that, the component is also going to detect if you are holding another actor that has a ranged weapon component on your opposite hand. If it is, Then it is going to fire the shooting event on the twin ranged weapon on a flip-flop. Then we can have this one gun, other gun shooting like in Tomb Raider or something like that. Another thing that was very important for this component to do was change the player camera and orientation. So instead of the player facing the camera if you move it around, it is always going to look forward and have his back against the camera, even if you change positions. Now, with this component and this mechanic, it's much easier to add a new gun into the game without losing too much time remaking my code. But I still want to add some alternative shooting methods like a cannon or a mortar, where the projectile can have a curve showing the projectile's travel path, like throwing a grenade in Uncharted. Another thing that took a good while as well was the animation logic behind the ranged component, because each weapon is going to have a pose to be held that will be completely unique. That is also blended with the character movement, and besides that, each weapon is going to have a custom firing animation and a custom reload animation as well. I had to build all of this logic to be able to run and shoot with any hand independent on the other while reloading using both, all the while having the ranged component working alongside it while you dodge and jump around. One cool thing I did was turn this ranged component into a separate animation graph, making the code isolated and more organized. The final result is far from perfect, as I think it lacks a little bit of expression on the animation itself. But the gameplay was very smooth and dynamic, so I'm very happy with this result. So to make the guns themselves work, I thought long and hard about how I would do the ammo. Would the ammo be just a regular item you can pick up and craft? Or would the ammo be like a coin in a different bag? Or would it maybe even be better off to not have any ammo at all? For a long time, I was thinking on never putting ammo or reloading animations, but I think the action of having to stop a little bit to reload adds a lot to the rhythm of combat and player engagement. Like in the middle of combat, you have to wait for your weapons to reload while dodging the enemy. It's more enjoyable to play around. Now about the ammo, I ended up making another separate component, and this one is going to go on the player pocket and is literally that, a pocket that holds ammo. On this pocket there is a new type of item which is the child blueprint of the generic item, and you can craft as a normal item on the workbench. The idea is that in the game there is going to be different types of ammo with different costs for crafting. The first one is the scrap metal nuggets, and you can craft 30 of these with just one scrap metal. When you receive this item, instead of it entering your normal inventory, there is some sort of treatment on the inventory component where it is going to be redirected into your ammo bag. And the idea with the ammo bag in Sparkmutts is that normally the item stack is going to be either 32 or 64, but with ammo I was thinking of having something like 500 or more. So with this bag we can have a big quantity of ammo without breaking the pattern of item stacks, and it's also going to make it easier to organize for the player. The only thing that is still bothering me a lot, honestly, is the positioning of this ammo bag here on the journal. I don't really know exactly of a very good place to put this thing, but I'm still experimenting around to see where it's going to fit best. And there we have it. Now you can craft your ammo and your gun, then with each shot the component is going to subtract 1 from your ammo bag. Another really cool thing too is that this crosshair I've added is going to dynamically show how much ammo you currently have on your clip without having to check on the bottom of the screen. This crosshair is automatically going to set these little spaces to the amount of ammo you have on your magazine, and with every shot it is going to subtract by 1. So a gun with 10 ammo on the magazine is going to have 10 little spaces, while a gun with 50 is going to have 50 spaces. And the coolest thing is that this crosshair is going to show different values for each gun if you dual wield. The next topic I'm going to go over is the selected items that is going to show up on your HUD. Now when you have the right hand active, the left hand is going to be grayed out, indicating that you don't have the hand active, and if you click to use a weapon or something like that, the input is going to be ignored. I added this because a lot of times I didn't know what hand I had currently active, and that caused some confusion sometimes. If me, the game developer, had confusion with my own mechanic, that won't be clear enough for players. Now it's not only going to show the item that you have selected, but it's also going to show what actions you can take with this particular item. So if you have selected a gun, it is going to show the controls for the gun, but if you pick a melee weapon, it is also going to show the controls for the melee weapon. Before doing the targeting system on the enemies, I needed to reformulate my logic for the player camera. The way the camera was working before was that I would feed some parameters like the distance of the camera, the extra rotation, and if the player could move it or not. Then the camera is going to receive these values and update the positioning, with me also being able to revert to default once I was done with that. A problem I found is that if you have two components messing with the camera constantly, it is going to cause a bunch of conflicts and bugs, where one is going to overwrite the other, and I needed to do something that is going to work seamlessly without any bugs. The system now kind of works the same way in theory, but with different levels of priority. For example, when a component wants to change the player camera, it is also going to feed a priority number that is checked inside of the player camera code. The only camera data that is going to be used is the one with the highest priority. So if you are manipulating the camera to aim and you start targeting the enemy, the target system is going to have a higher priority than the ranged gun component. And with that, the camera works perfectly without patchworking solutions and any concerns for bugs. As Todd Howard says, it just works. Now that we have the priority system, it was about time that I made a targeting mechanic for combat. Something like in Dark Souls, I guess. I think the combo system itself kind of asked me to make a player lock-on targeting system. And now with the ranged guns, it would work something like a budget version of Devil May Cry. Oh, and the lock-on is also, yeah, you guessed it, another component. I don't know, I just think of making a bunch of components because each component can have its own code kind of in a pocket area where it's easier to find and debug if you have any issues with the code. So it's kind of modularizing code in order to keep it organized. The lock-on component is also going to receive player input when you click with the middle mouse button and is going to detect if there are any nearby enemies and in your field of view. The component is then going to manipulate the camera to make it always face the enemy and keep it on the center of the screen. Then if you move the mouse left or right, it is going to take all of the enemies in view, project them into widget space, and then retrieve the nearest enemy to the left or to the right of your field of view. In this, I also have integrated the ranged weapon component, which is going to automatically target enemies with the crosshair and shoot on their positions without worrying about aiming. This also works fine on dual wielding. The last change I worked on was adding this little tree branch where you can pick it up from the ground, and this is the most basic weapon you can collect in the game and is not going to have a lot of durability. But with this, you can make your first axe and your first pickaxe. With this, I also took the time to mirror all of the combo animations in the game. Before, you could only use melee weapons with your right hand, because I've done all of this huge collection of animations only with your right hand in mind. I went through them one by one, duplicating and mirroring them and adding them to the game. Now, if you pick a melee weapon on your left hand, you can execute all of the combos normally with that, giving you a lot more freedom to have whatever you want on each hand. In the future, I also plan on maybe adding an option to remove one of the hands, like for example, let's say that you just want to have the right hand. This would be a good way to remove some complication if you feel like the system is too overwhelming. I personally love it because it gives you 10 more slots to have whatever loadout of items you want, like weapons on the right hand and consumables or tools on the left, but I can definitely see how it would start to feel like you're playing Octodad sometimes. And that's all for today, guys. My next goal now is to finally add enemies to this procedural world that you will be able to fight and collect resources from. I'll do a small revamp on the boars from way back then when the game was in early development. Besides that, I am thinking on polishing the current mechanics that I've added, polish the interface elements, and just make the gameplay better as we approach open alpha. As always, I'll be giving away 5 keys to the closed alpha on the Discord channel, so join us if you want to be a part of a very cool community and playtest my dream game. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like it and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned on the next updates that I add. I'm Leo, signing off.